The conference room buzzed with the chatter of colleagues as I glanced at my phone, its screen lighting up with an incoming call from Tyler. I stepped out into the hallway, expecting the usual small talk. How's the trip? When will you be home? Instead, Tyler's voice came through, cold and smug. I'm divorcing you, he said, almost triumphant. I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The audacity of it, the complete lack of remorse, was almost laughable. My hand tightened around the phone, trying to steady myself as his words sank in. You sold the apartment? I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could manage. Yeah, he replied with a dry laugh. Nicole and I need the money to start our life together. She deserves better than a tiny place like that anyway. Nicole? The name stung, even though I had suspected for months there was someone else. Tyler's late nights, his sudden work trips, and the mounting distance between us had all pointed to a third party. But hearing him speak her name so casually, as though I were the intruder in their life, lit a fire in my chest. Sounds good, I replied evenly, my tone deliberate. There was no way I was giving him the satisfaction of hearing me crack. I am Amelia, and up until that phone call, I had believed I had married a man I could trust. Tyler and I had been together for 6 years, and while things hadn't always been perfect, I had believed in our partnership. We'd worked hard to buy our apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city that I had fallen in love with the moment I saw it. It wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of everything we had built together, or so I thought. Looking back, there had been signs, small cracks in the foundation that I had ignored. Tyler's dismissive attitude whenever I asked about finances, his tendency to brush off my concerns with a charming smile and a quick kiss. I had always assumed his confidence came from knowing what he was doing. Now I realized it came from knowing he could manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I sat through client meetings, nodding at all the right moments while my mind raced. Tyler thought he'd won. He thought he could pull the rug out from under me, sell the home I'd worked so hard for, and walk away scot-free. But there was one crucial detail he didn't know. The apartment deed had been in my name alone for months. I had had it transferred after we refinanced earlier in the year, a move Tyler had agreed to without much thought because it meant a lower interest rate. He'd never bothered to ask about the details or read the paperwork he'd signed. His carelessness was going to be his undoing. By the time I returned to my hotel room that evening, my shock had turned into resolve. I wasn't going to cry or beg. If Tyler wanted a fight, fine. But this was a fight I was going to win. The first call I made was to Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. I laid out the situation in painstaking detail, my voice calm even as my pulse raced. He sold the apartment? She repeated, incredulous. Does he even realize that he can't do that without your consent? Apparently not, I said, a hint of amusement creeping into my tone. He thinks he's already spent the money on his new life with Nicole. Chloe laughed dryly. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. The sale is invalid. You can prove sole ownership, and if he's taken any money from the buyer, he's on the hook for fraud. The word fraud sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. What do we need to do? First, we'll notify the buyer that the sale isn't legal, Chloe said. Then we'll draft a formal letter for Tyler, outlining the consequences of his actions. If he's dumb enough to try anything else, we'll take him to court. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Tyler thought he had outsmarted me, that he had left me powerless and scrambling. But in reality, he had just set himself up for the ultimate humiliation. The flight home gave me hours to think, and I couldn't help but replay the conversation with Tyler in my mind. His arrogance was astounding. He hadn't even tried to hide his betrayal, as though I was just an obstacle. But instead of spiraling into anger, I focused on what I would do when I returned. Tyler thought I was powerless, but what he didn't realize was that I had been playing the long game. I had taken small steps to ensure my independence, and now it was all coming to a head. The apartment, which had once been a symbol of our life together, was still mine, and I was going to fight to keep it. When I landed and grabbed my suitcase, I made the first call to Chloe. I'm back, I said, dragging my luggage through the airport. We've already notified the buyer, she replied. They were shocked and they're willing to cooperate. And Tyler? I asked. I sent the formal letter to his email this morning, Chloe said. It outlines the illegality of the sale and your sole ownership. He hasn't responded yet, but I bet he's furious. Good, I thought. Let him stew. Let him feel the sting of his carelessness. When I arrived home, the apartment was quiet. Tyler's things were still there, his jackets, his shoes, but the space felt different. The energy had shifted. I set my suitcase down, knowing the confrontation with Tyler was coming soon. That evening, Tyler stormed in, his face red with anger and his phone clutched in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving the letter. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No," I said calmly, crossing my arms. "The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something you don't own." For a moment, he said nothing, his face a mixture of confusion and rage. Then his expression twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so smart, don't you? This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal." "The sale is void, Tyler," I said. "The buyer knows it, and they're ready to take legal action if you don't return the money." Tyler's confidence wavered. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "You've treated me like I'm too naive to notice, but now you're going to deal with the consequences." Tyler's frustration mounted. "This is ridiculous. You can't just kick me out of here." "I can," I said. "This apartment is legally mine. You can stay here for now, but I'm giving you time to figure out your next move." Over the next few days, Tyler's anger turned to desperation. He called me repeatedly, leaving frantic voicemails that alternated between begging and threatening. Meanwhile, Chloe worked behind the scenes to ensure everything was in order. The buyer rescinded the agreement, furious at Tyler for wasting their time, and Chloe drafted the preliminary divorce paperwork. "You're in a good position, Amelia," Chloe told me. "Tyler has no leverage here. Between the voided sale and the fraud charges, he'll have to cooperate if he wants to avoid a bigger mess." One evening, Laura, my best friend, came over to help me reorganize the apartment. As we boxed up Tyler's things, she asked, "How's he taking all this?" "Not well," I said, laughing despite myself. "He's still convinced he can talk his way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," Laura said, tossing one of his ties into the box. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or your time." I nodded, grateful for her support. For so long I had felt alone in my marriage, carrying the emotional and financial burden, while Tyler took credit for everything. But now, I had people in my corner, and that made all the difference. The final piece of my plan fell into place when Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining table, reviewing paperwork when they walked in, acting like they owned the place. Nicole looked around with a smug smile, her arm intertwined with his. "So this is where we're staying," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. I stood up, heart pounding but determined. "No," I said firmly. "This is where Tyler was staying. You won't be staying here." Nicole's smile faltered, and Tyler looked shocked. "What is this?" he demanded. "This," I said, gesturing to the apartment, "is my home, not yours, not hers, and certainly not a hotel for you to shack up in after stabbing me in the back." Nicole's expression grew cold, but she stayed silent. Tyler looked like he was about to explode. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You're being unreasonable." I met his gaze. "What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, walk away with the money, and expect me to roll over. You're lucky I haven't filed charges." Tyler stood in the doorway, frustration mounting, while Nicole crossed her arms. "You're being ridiculous, Amelia," he said. "You can't just kick me out." "This is my home, Tyler. The deed has been in my name for months, and you know it. You signed the paperwork without reading it. So no, this isn't your home anymore." Nicole glanced at Tyler. "Wait, what's she talking about?" she asked. "You said this was your apartment, that you sold it." Tyler hesitated, trying to dismiss it. "It's complicated. I'll handle it." "It's not complicated," I said, stepping closer. "You tried to sell an apartment that didn't belong to you. That sale is void, and as of right now, you have nothing." Nicole's composure cracked. "You mean the money you told me you had?" she asked. "Did you lie about that too?" Nicole stepped back. "Fraud?" she whispered. "Are you serious?" "Yes," I said, crossing my arms. "And I'm prepared to press charges if he doesn't get his things and leave by the end of the day." Tyler's facade cracked. "You can't do this, Amelia," he pleaded. "We've been together for 6 years. You threw me out the moment you made that phone call," I said, hardening my tone. "You didn't just betray me, Tyler. You tried to ruin me. So don't stand there and act like you're the victim." Nicole backed away. "I'm not getting dragged into this mess," she muttered, turning on her heel and storming out. Tyler was left standing there, stunned. "Looks like you're on your own," I said, turning to him. "Now, let's talk about what happens next." Tyler collapsed on the couch, burying his face in his hands. "Amelia, please." "I screwed up. You don't have to do this." "I don't have to do this, but I will," I said, grabbing a folder from the counter and setting it in front of him. "This is the divorce paperwork. My lawyer has already drafted it. Sign it, and we can both move on." Tyler stared at the folder, pale. "You really hate me that much?" "Hate you?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Tyler. I feel sorry for you. You had everything and threw it away." "I want you out of here by the end of the day," I said, my voice steady. "Take your things and figure out where you're going. This is the last time I'm giving you any grace." He slumped in defeat. "Fine. I'll go." "Good," I said, walking toward the door. "And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe's already handling everything, and if you cross a line, I'll let the courts handle it." As Tyler left, I felt a sense of relief. The apartment was finally mine, and I was free from his manipulation. After Tyler left, the apartment felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. The space was mine again, no longer filled with Tyler's presence or his lies. But the battle wasn't over. While Tyler was packing, I knew the real work had just begun. He had taken so much from me, and I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. I met Chloe a few days later. She was confident as always, and I felt relief knowing I wasn't in this alone. "We're making good progress," Chloe said. "I've sent him the formal notice. His lawyers will likely get involved soon, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on." "Good," I replied. "I want him to understand there are consequences." Chloe nodded. "And we're moving forward with the divorce. The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer won't pursue them, but Tyler's still liable for breach of contract." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Tyler thought he was clever, but his actions had set him up for humiliation. The fraud, the lies, everything was coming back to haunt him. Over the next week, I focused on finalizing the divorce paperwork. Tyler's attempts to reach me didn't stop. His messages ranged from apologies to manipulative pleas. I didn't respond. For once, I wasn't going to waste my energy fixing something that was beyond repair. One evening, Lauren came over to help me rearrange the apartment. "How's he taking it?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not well," I laughed. "He's still convinced he can talk his way out of it." Lauren smiled. "Good. He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or time." "I've been saying that for years," I replied, feeling lighter. Then I found an old photo of Tyler and me from the early days, smiling and hopeful. I stared at it for a moment, letting the memories wash over me. But those moments were gone, overshadowed by neglect and betrayal. I tucked the photo away. It didn't define me anymore. The divorce was moving smoothly. Tyler wasn't fighting it. Chloe kept me updated, and I felt a sense of relief as I knew the end was near. Lauren and I celebrated with dinner and drinks. "You're glowing," she said, raising her glass. "Single life suits you." I laughed. "It's not the single life. It's the freedom. I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules anymore." We toasted to new beginnings in the future. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The days after Tyler left were a blur of strange calm. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing again. The apartment, once full of tension and lies, now felt like my own. It was quiet, peaceful even. There was no Tyler's clutter, no reminders of his presence, just space for me to rebuild. But the battle wasn't over. While Tyler had been packing his things, I knew the real work had just begun. I couldn't let him walk away unscathed. He had taken so much from me, and it was time to make sure he paid for it. I met with Chloe a few days after the confrontation. She was as sharp and confident as ever, and I felt a sense of relief knowing I wasn't fighting this alone. "We're making good progress," she said, sitting across from me at the coffee shop. "I've sent him the formal notice. His lawyers will likely get involved soon, but he doesn't have a leg to stand on." "Good," I said, sipping my coffee. "I want him to understand there are consequences. He can't just take everything from me and walk away like he's the victim. Chloe nodded, and we're in a good position to move forward with the divorce proceedings. The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer decided not to pursue them, but Tyler is still liable for breach of contract. He'll have to answer for what he's done. I smiled, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Tyler thought he was clever, outsmarting me and getting away with it. But in reality, his actions had set him up for the most humiliating downfall. The fraud, the lies, it was all going to come back to haunt him. And I would make sure of it. Over the next week, I focused on finalizing the divorce paperwork. Tyler's attempts to reach me continued, his messages ranging from half-hearted apologies to manipulative pleas. I made a mistake, one read. Can we at least talk about this? Another. You're going to ruin me, Amelia. Is that what you want? I didn't respond. Not a single time. For once, I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to fix something that was beyond repair. Tyler had made his choices, and now he had to deal with the consequences. I leaned into the support I had around me. Lauren, my best friend, was a constant presence. One evening, she came over to help me with some final touches in the apartment. We unpacked boxes and rearranged furniture, turning the space into something that reflected who I was now. How's he doing? Lauren asked, raising an eyebrow as she flipped through a magazine on the couch. Not well, I said, laughing softly. He's still trying to convince himself that he can talk his way out of this, but I'm not budging. Lauren gave a knowing smile. Good, he doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or your time. I've been saying that for years, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It was like I had spent so much time trying to make things work with someone who wasn't willing to meet me halfway. But now, I had taken back control. The next day, I came across something I hadn't expected. An old photo of Tyler and me from the early days of our relationship. We were smiling, arms around each other, full of hope and promise. I stared at it for a moment, allowing the memories to wash over me. There had been good times, moments when I truly believed we were building a life together. But those moments were gone, overshadowed by years of neglect and betrayal. I tucked the photo into an envelope and put it away in a drawer. It was part of my past, but it didn't define me anymore. The divorce was progressing smoothly, and Chloe kept me updated on Tyler's responses, or lack thereof. He wasn't fighting it anymore. He knew he had lost. The papers were ready, and all that was left was for Tyler to sign them. Lauren and I celebrated the small victories with dinner and drinks at a rooftop bar downtown. You're glowing, she said, raising her glass to me. Single life suits you. I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It's not the single life, I said, sipping my drink. It's the freedom. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules. We clinked glasses, toasting to new beginnings, to freedom, to the future. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The days after the celebration were filled with quiet satisfaction. My life, which had once been dominated by Tyler's control and manipulation, was now mine to reclaim. The apartment, once a symbol of his lies, was finally becoming a reflection of who I truly was, a woman who no longer needed to shrink herself for someone else's comfort. Tyler's calls became less frequent, though the occasional message would still pop up. I made a mistake, one read. Please, let's talk. Another. You're ruining everything, Amelia. I need you. But I didn't respond. He had made his choices, and it was no longer my responsibility to fix what he had broken. I kept moving forward, step by step. The paperwork for the divorce was moving along smoothly. Tyler had stopped fighting, realizing he had no ground to stand on. He had failed to outsmart me, and now he was paying the price. It was a Thursday evening when Chloe called with an update. Everything's on track. Tyler signed the divorce papers this afternoon. It's done, Amelia. You're free. Free. The word echoed in my mind, filling the empty space in the apartment. Free from Tyler. Free from his manipulation. Free to rebuild my life on my own terms. I felt a sense of weight lifting off my shoulders. The relief was almost overwhelming, but there was no time to sit and bask in it. I had spent too long sacrificing for someone who never appreciated it. I was ready to take control of my future. A few days later, I received a text from my sister, Ella. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce proceedings had begun, but her message was unexpected. Amelia, I know things have been rough with Tyler, but I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. You've handled everything with so much strength. I hope you're doing okay. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to warmth. It wasn't just the acknowledgement from my sister. It was the realization that I had finally started to see myself for who I really was. Someone worthy of respect. Someone strong. I called her, and we talked for hours. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. We laughed, shared stories, and made plans to meet up soon. It felt good to reconnect with someone who cared. Someone who saw me for who I was, not just what I could give. It was a reminder that even though I had spent years giving everything to Tyler, there were still people who would offer their support, their love, without expecting anything in return. Later that week, I decided to take a break from everything. I packed a bag and went for a long weekend getaway to a quiet cabin in the mountains. The peace and solitude were exactly what I needed. I spent my days hiking, reading, and reflecting on everything I had been through. I thought about the person I was before Tyler, someone who had dreams, ambitions, and a sense of independence. I thought about how I had lost myself in the relationship, how I had let his needs always come first, and how I had sacrificed my own happiness for his. But I also realized that I wasn't that person anymore. I had found my voice again, my strength, and most importantly, I had learned to put myself first. The weekend passed quickly, and as I returned to the city, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to embrace the future, to rebuild my life, and to live it on my own terms. Tyler had thought he could break me, but in the end, it was him who had been broken, and I had emerged stronger than ever. I returned to the apartment, unpacked my bags, and smiled. This was my home, my life, and no one would take it from me again. I was ready to face whatever came next, with confidence and strength. The days after returning from my weekend getaway were filled with a sense of renewal. The weight that had hung over me for so long, Tyler's lies, his manipulation, had finally lifted, and in its place, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. The apartment, which had once felt like a battlefield, now felt like a sanctuary. I had reclaimed it, and more importantly, I had reclaimed myself. I began focusing on the things that had always been pushed to the back burner during my marriage: my career, my passions, and most importantly, my happiness. It was time to put myself first for once. For so many years, I had sacrificed everything for someone who never truly appreciated me. Now I was going to take back the life I had put on hold. I started looking into career opportunities I had once dreamed of but had never dared to pursue. I applied for several positions that aligned with my passions and skills, things that made me feel alive rather than just getting by. I also signed up for an art class I had always wanted to take, but had put off because of Tyler's demands. But it wasn't just about work or hobbies. It was about finding joy in the small things. I began to rediscover the parts of myself that had been buried for years, the parts that had been overshadowed by someone else's needs and expectations. I started cooking again, experimenting with new recipes, and filling the apartment with the sense of fresh herbs and spices. I started taking walks in the park, listening to music, and simply enjoying the quiet. One evening, while I was sipping wine on my balcony, the phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. "Amelia, there's been some movement on the divorce. Tyler's lawyer tried to reach out for a settlement, but it's just a formality. He wants to close things quickly." I wasn't surprised. Tyler was trying to get out of this as quickly as possible, not wanting to deal with the fallout any longer. It was exactly what I expected from him. His arrogance had always been his downfall. I called Chloe to discuss it. "I'm not rushing this," I said. "I'm not going to settle just to make things easier for him. Let him deal with the consequences of his actions." Chloe agreed. "Take your time. You've already made it clear you won't be manipulated, and he's going to have to accept that." As the weeks passed, I focused on living my life, not on Tyler or his attempts to manipulate me into feeling guilty. I didn't feel the need to dwell on the past anymore. Tyler had already shown me who he was, and there was no reason to waste energy on someone who had treated me so badly. He was no longer a part of my story, and I was no longer going to allow him to define my future. The divorce was finalized just a few weeks later. Tyler signed the papers without any drama. There was no grand confrontation, no emotional pleas. It was a quiet, final act of closure. And though it should have felt bittersweet, I felt nothing but relief. It was over. I spent the evening after the papers were finalized sitting on the couch, reflecting on everything that had happened. I thought about the years I had spent trying to make things work, trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair, and I thought about the strength it had taken to finally let go. But most of all, I thought about the future that was now mine to shape. I was free to pursue my dreams, free to be the person I had always been, and free to create a life that was mine and mine alone. The next day, I took a walk in the park, enjoying the sunshine and the fresh air. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. Instead, I was thinking about what was to come. I felt hopeful, like the world was full of possibilities again. And as I walked through the park, I realized something. Tyler had been right about one thing. He had thought he was taking everything from me, but in the end, he had only given me the opportunity to rebuild, to become the person I was always meant to be. The final chapter of my journey wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the divorce. It was about the freedom I had found, the freedom to rebuild my life on my own terms. Tyler had thought he could destroy me, take everything from me, but instead, he had inadvertently given me the gift of self-empowerment. And with that, I started to truly see who I was without him. The weeks after the divorce were transformative. I threw myself into work with a renewed sense of purpose, pursuing projects I had once only dreamed of. I found new connections, professional opportunities, and began making strides in my career that I had put on hold for so long. I was no longer living in the shadow of Tyler's expectations. I was making my own path with my own goals. But it wasn't just about the career. I rediscovered my passions, my sense of adventure. I traveled more, exploring places I had always wanted to visit, but had pushed aside to accommodate Tyler's preferences. I even started painting again, a hobby I had neglected during our relationship. My art was a way to express the freedom I had found, a form of catharsis that allowed me to channel everything I had endured into something beautiful. I also took time to focus on my health, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I joined a yoga class, took long hikes through the city, and spent more time with friends who had always been there for me. With them, I could laugh again, share stories, and talk about things that mattered, not just about surviving day to day. They reminded me of who I was before Tyler, and for that, I would be forever grateful. One evening, I received a message from Chloe. She had kept me updated on Tyler's attempts to appeal the divorce settlement, but in the end, he had backed off. He hadn't tried to contact me again. There was nothing left for him to take. "You did it, Amelia," she texted. "You got through this stronger than I ever imagined." I smiled to myself, a sense of pride washing over me. She was right. I had faced one of the most difficult challenges of my life, and not only had I survived, it had made me stronger. The final blow came when I sold the apartment, the one that had once felt like a prison. It had been my home, but it had also been a constant reminder of Tyler's manipulation. The sale wasn't just a financial transaction. It was symbolic. It marked the end of that chapter. I was truly free. I moved into a new place, a bright, airy apartment with wide windows and a balcony overlooking the city. It was everything I had dreamed of, a fresh start. The space felt like me, open, welcoming, and full of potential. As I unpacked my things and arranged my furniture, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was my life now. I didn't need anyone's approval to live it. Tyler's name had long faded from my daily thoughts. His betrayal, his lies, they were all part of a past that no longer held any power over me. I realized that the best revenge wasn't in punishing him, but in proving to myself that I was capable of creating a better life, one that didn't revolve around someone else's expectations. In time, I reconnected with parts of myself I had forgotten. I found joy in small, everyday moments. A cup of coffee in the morning, a walk in the park, a quiet evening spent reading. I didn't need a man to define my worth. I had found that in myself. One night, as I sat on my new balcony, sipping wine and watching the sunset, I couldn't help but smile. Life was good, and it was mine to live. Tyler had thought he could destroy me. But what he didn't realize was that in his attempt to take everything from me, he had given me everything I needed to rebuild, to start over, and to thrive. The woman I had been before was gone, but the woman I had become was even stronger, more independent, and more free than I had ever imagined.